Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Buckle up, because today we're diving into a mind-blowing thought experiment that'll stretch your imagination and make you rethink the world as we know it. What if the United States of America, the global superpower, woke up tomorrow morning split into two completely separate countries? That's right, one nation ripped in half. Would we see political chaos, economic collapse, or social upheaval? Or could this be a chance for a bold new beginning? Let's unpack this wild scenario step by step and explore what it could mean for America and the world. This video, we're going to break down how the USA could fracture, the ripple effects across the globe, and what the new nations might look like. We'll dig into historical examples, analyze the political and cultural fault lines driving this hypothetical split, and let our imaginations run wild with what the future could hold. From economic turmoil to military standoffs to cultural revolutions, we're covering it all. So grab a snack, get comfortable, and let's jump into this crazy what-if scenario. How would the split happen? First, let's tackle the big question. How could the United States, a country that's been united for over 250 years, split into two? This wouldn't just be about drawing a line on a map. It would be a seismic rupture driven by deep political, cultural, and ideological divides. The U.S. is already polarized like never before. Democrats versus Republicans. Coastal elites versus heartland communities. Urban progressives versus rural traditionalists. Social media amplifies these divides, turning debates into battlegrounds. So what could push America to the breaking point? Maybe a contested election, a constitutional crisis, or even a grassroots movement demanding separation. Let's explore how this could play out. Possible scenarios. Here are some ways the split could unfold. The simplest scenario is states dividing based on political leanings. Picture this: the West and East Coasts, states like California, New York, Oregon, and Washington, which consistently vote Democratic, form one country. Meanwhile, the heartland and southern states like Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, and the Dakotas, which lean Republican, form another. Sounds clean, right? Not so fast. Even within states, there's division. California's coastal cities are liberal hotspots, but its inland farms and rural areas are deeply conservative. Would these regions stay together, or would we see micro-splits within states? Forget geography. What if people sorted themselves by ideology? Urban centers across the country, from Seattle to Miami, could band together to form a liberal USA, while rural and suburban areas create a conservative USA. This would trigger a massive reshuffling of the population. Imagine millions packing up, loading moving trucks, and relocating to align with their beliefs. Cities like Austin, a liberal oasis in conservative Texas, might become ideological enclaves or face their own mini-splits. The logistics would be a nightmare. Tensions could flare as communities redraw borders. Would this split be a calm, negotiated divorce or a violent breakup? A peaceful split might involve diplomatic talks, constitutional amendments, and international mediators. Think of it like a corporate merger in reverse. But history suggests things could get messy. The U.S. Civil War in the 1860s fought over slavery and states' rights, left over 600,000 dead. Today, with advanced weaponry, drones, and cyber warfare, a modern conflict could be catastrophic. Social media could escalate things further, with viral hashtags like #SplitUSA, fueling protests, or even militias. Historical examples. This idea might sound like science fiction, but history offers some real-world parallels. The USSR, a global superpower, fractured into 15 independent nations almost overnight. The split brought economic collapse, power vacuums, and years of instability. Russia inherited much of the Soviet military, but smaller states like Ukraine and Belarus struggled to find their footing. A U.S. split could follow a similar path, with one side holding more power than the other. In the 1990s, Yugoslavia broke apart along ethnic and cultural lines, leading to a brutal civil war that killed over 100,000 people and displaced millions. The conflict was fueled by nationalism and old grudges. Sound familiar? America's cultural divides could ignite similar tensions if not handled carefully. This is the rare success story. Czechoslovakia peacefully split into the Czech Republic, and Slovakia through negotiations, but the U.S. is far larger, more diverse, and more globally entangled, making a smooth divorce unlikely. The U.S. isn't just a country, it's the linchpin of global trade, security, and culture. A split would send shockwaves far beyond its borders. Structure of the new countries. Let's imagine the split happens, and two new nations emerge, coastal USA and heartland USA. What would these countries look like? How would they govern, thrive, or struggle? Coastal USA would likely choose a major hub like New York City, with its financial clout, or Los Angeles, with its cultural influence. Both are global cities with infrastructure to lead a new nation. This nation would be an economic powerhouse, driven by tech giants in Silicon Valley, financial markets on Wall Street, and Hollywood's entertainment empire. It would embrace globalization, signing trade deals with Europe and Asia, but its wealth would concentrate in urban centers, leaving smaller coastal towns struggling. Expect progressive, social democratic policies, universal health care, aggressive climate change initiatives, and strong social safety nets. Coastal USA might model itself after Scandinavian countries, prioritizing equality and innovation. But internal debates over wealth distribution could create friction. High living costs would be a major issue. Think San Francisco's skyrocketing rents. Energy dependence would also loom large, as desert cities like Las Vegas rely on imported resources. And income inequality could spark protests, especially if rural coastal areas feel left behind. Heartland USA might pick a city, like Austin, Texas, for its economic growth, or Atlanta, Georgia, for its transport hubs. These cities are vibrant, but less globally connected than New York or LA. Agriculture, energy, oil, natural gas, and coal, and manufacturing would dominate. Heartland USA could become a breadbasket, feeding itself and exporting crops. But its protectionist stance might limit trade, and reliance on fossil fuels could clash with global green trends. Low taxes, deregulation, and a focus on individual freedoms would define its government. Socially conservative values, like traditional family structures and religious influence, would shape laws. But this could alienate younger generations pushing for change. Limited access to cutting-edge technology could hinder growth. Silicon Valley's brain trust would be in coastal USA. Aging infrastructure, like crumbling bridges and roads, would need massive investment, and global isolation could weaken its influence over time. Military and nuclear weapons. The U.S. has the world's most powerful military, with over 700 overseas bases and thousands of nuclear warheads. What happens to this arsenal? Both nations might negotiate a division of assets, splitting bases, ships, and missiles. But mistrust could lead to standoffs, especially over who controls key bases like Norfolk or Guam. Nuclear weapons are the real wild card. The U.S. has about 5,000 warheads. If each side claims a share, the risk of a new arms race or even a preemptive strike grows. Imagine former allies aiming missiles at each other across new borders. International mediators, like the UN, could step in to oversee disarmament or neutral zones. But with global rivals like China watching, both sides might cling to their weapons for leverage. The USA's split would be a global earthquake. The U.S. drives world economics, anchors security alliances, and shapes pop culture. A fracture would rewrite the international order. Economic impacts. The U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency, used in over 80% of global transactions. A split would erode confidence, crashing its value. Stock markets from Tokyo to London would plummet, and countries holding us debt like China, with over $1 trillion, would face losses. Coastal USA would likely deepen ties with Europe and Asia, securing tech and luxury goods. Heartland USA, more protectionist, might impose tariffs, disrupting supply chains for everything from cars to soybeans. Global trade could stall, triggering recessions. Wall Street, based in coastal USA, would remain a global hub, But Heartland USA would struggle without comparable financial infrastructure. New stock exchanges in Atlanta or Dallas would take years to rival New York's. Political impacts: the U.S. funds 25% of NATO's budget and hosts its largest military. Split would paralyze the alliance, emboldening rivals like Russia. Headquartered in New York might lose funding, weakening global diplomacy in the Middle East. A weaker U.S. presence could embolden Iran or spark Saudi-Israeli tensions. In Asia, China might seize the moment to dominate the South China Sea or pressure Taiwan. Smaller powers like North Korea could test the new nation's resolve. Coastal USA might align with liberal democracies like Canada and the EU, while Heartland USA could forge ties with populist or authoritarian regimes. This realignment would reshape global politics for decades. The U.S. exports culture through Hollywood, music, and tech. Split would dilute this influence. Coastal USA, with Hollywood and Netflix, would likely retain global dominance. But Heartland USA might focus on local media, like country music, or faith-based films. Coastal USA could become a multicultural beacon, embracing diversity and global trends. Heartland USA might double down on traditional values, creating a distinct inward-looking identity. This could spark a cultural Cold War over whose values represent America. The world might view the split as America's decline, boosting the cultural influence of rivals like China or India. K-pop and Bollywood could outshine American pop culture if the U.S. loses its unified voice. Social and cultural consequences. How would everyday Americans cope with this split? Would people uproot their lives to join their ideological tribe? Would communities fracture along political lines? Migration waves? A split could trigger the largest internal migration in history. Liberals in red states and conservatives in blue states might flee to their preferred nation. Cities like Chicago could see mass exoduses, while rural areas gain or lose populations. This migration would strain infrastructure. Housing shortages would skyrocket. Imagine tent cities popping up outside new capitals. Unemployment could spike as industries realign, and schools and hospitals would struggle to keep up. Families and friendships could fracture. If your sibling moves to Heartland USA while you stay in Coastal USA, holiday reunions might require passports and visas. Social media could worsen divides, with echo chambers reinforcing new national identities. Cultural shifts. Coastal USA would likely become a globalized, multicultural hub, embracing immigration and progressive values. Cities like San Francisco and Miami could rival Paris or Tokyo in diversity. Heartland USA might prioritize a homogeneous, traditional culture, emphasizing faith, family, and rural life. Think small-town festivals, megachurches, and a revival of Heartland pride. These differences could fuel stereotypes. Coastal USA might see Heartland as backward, while Heartland views Coastal as elitist. This mutual disdain could harden borders and identities. Education and science. Coastal USA, home to Silicon Valley, MIT, and Harvard, would lead in tech and research. It could pioneer AI, green energy, and biotech, attracting global talent. Heartland USA might focus on practical education, think trade, schools, agricultural colleges, and energy training. While valuable, this could widen the tech gap, leaving Heartland reliant on coastal imports. Brain drain would be a risk. Scientists and engineers might flock to Coastal USA, while Heartland struggles to fund universities. Over time, this could create a first world versus developing dynamic within the former USA. Possible future scenarios. What's the long-term outlook? Here are 3 paths the split could take. Economic interdependence. Coastal USA needs Heartland's food and energy. Heartland needs Coastal's tech. Could force the nations to reunite. But old grudges and new identities would make this a decades-long process. It's like East and West Germany. Disputes over borders, who gets swing states like Ohio. Resources like Colorado's water or military assets could spark war. A modern civil war with drones and cyber acts could devastate both sides and draw in global powers. The two nations might coexist like North and South Korea, with fortified borders, trade agreements, and occasional diplomatic spats. They'd compete on the world stage, each claiming to be the true America. The question, what if the USA split into two, isn't just a fun hypothetical, a stark reminder of how fragile unity can be. Polarization, whether over politics, culture, or values, can tear even the strongest nations apart. Maybe this scenario pushes us to value compromise, dialogue, and the ties that bind us. So what do you think? Did the USA ever split? Did you pick coastal USA's global vibe or heartland USA's traditional roots? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Read everyone. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for more thought-provoking content. Let's keep the conversation going. See you in the next video.